Good afternoon, Britannia, and hello to the rest of the world. Welcome to 2CTV, your global news channel. Lord Pearson has now demanded more information from the Woodhill prison in regards to the treatment of Tommy Robinson. The governor of Woodhill has now responded with what can only be described as the most shocking way of treating this whole situation. And in this live stream, we're going to get your reaction in the live chat and the comment section on what should be done next by the political establishment. Ladies and gentlemen, before we start, a big shout out to every single person who's been supporting us. We have now reached 770,000 subscribers, I believe, on this channel. Of course, before we start, we have our promo code DOC10. You get 10% off annual memberships of 2CTV Plus. The documentary Groomed is going to be released this Sunday, and tomorrow we're going to have Sammy Woodhouse, who's the producer and presenter of that documentary, coming on this channel on YouTube to discuss the whole thing as a preview in case you want to know what it's all about. But let's talk about Tommy, because there's been a lot of push from the outside in terms of the political activists, commentators. Some of the new media people are talking about this. But some people in politics are also now raising this issue, including people like Rupert Lowe from Reform UK and now Lord Pearson. So Tommy's situation continues to get worse in terms of his diet, in terms of obviously his food situation, visits being cancelled left, right and centre, phone calls and emails restricted even from his family members sometimes. And now obviously a lot of people are concerned because if they can do it to someone like him, what about those with smaller platforms? So Lord Pearson is concerned, so he decided to get in touch with the Woodhill prison and sent out an open letter to them. But at the same time, Lord Pearson has also, we're going to talk about this because he's also got in touch with the government directly as well on behalf of the House of Lords. We're going to go through the reaction because I'm absolutely, baffled by the way they are so blasé about this and saying, well, everything's absolutely fine. Of course, we have everything is on high standards. It's sort of like what happened yesterday in the Oval Office in the White House when J.D. Vance was talking about the restrictions on free speech in the United Kingdom and in Europe. Keir Starmer was sitting there publicly and openly lying to the global population, saying, no, we have free speech, high standards of free speech. We are very proud of the history of free speech in the UK. Everyone was watching saying, well, you're clearly lying. So the same thing happened when it comes to the governor of the Woodhill prison and her response. So first things first, let's go to Lord Pearson. This is what he sent to the governor. Now, dear Nicola, if I may, ? Good start. I hope you don't mind if I write to you about Tommy Robinson, who has been sent to prison for contempt of court, a civil offence, not a criminal, obviously, conviction. I may have got it all wrong, but I am told he was sent originally to Belmarsh Prison as a Category D prisoner. He was then moved to HMP Woodhill as a Category C prisoner. I'm not clear as to why he was moved from D to C. I understand he is in solitary confinement and has been banned from ordering food for a week, tinned tuna fish and mackerel, because he spoke to his son on speakerphone when on an authorized call to another family member. I am told his visits have been blocked and his phone access cut off. He has not been in any trouble in prison, so these changes in his circumstances cannot be seen as punishment for bad behavior. He has lost a lot of weight and his mental health is deteriorating. I and many others would be grateful for anything you can do to help. With good wishes, Malcolm Pearson. Obviously, Lord Pearson of Rannoch. So this was the initial request. Very polite, very diplomatic. Then we finally received the response last night. The governor of Woodhill, Nicola Marfleet, responded to Lord Pearson, saying, Dear Lord Pearson, thank you for your correspondence of the 20th of February. They took them about a week to respond, by the way. You will understand that the requirements of data protection legislation mean I am unable to comment on the circumstances of specific individual prisoners. I do want to assure you, however, that the safety of those who live and work in our prisons remains our paramount concern. The decision on where a prisoner should be located will take into account a range of factors, the purpose of which is to assign an individual to a suitably secure establishment which meets their needs effectively. So they are saying this is in his own interest. Obviously, they're basically implying, she's implying that it's for his own safety. This is the same thing that they've been saying for a long time. Initially, it came out and said he requested it. Then they realized, oh, well, that's not really the case. He doesn't want to be in there forever. So they said, well, we're not really going to explain why, but it's for his own good. It continues. That's not the end of that letter. Nicola says, any prisoner who has a specific concern about their time in prison can make a complaint via the internal prisoner complaints process and will be entitled to ask the Prisons and Probation Ombudsman to conduct an independent review of that matter should it not be resolved to their satisfaction. In addition, every prisoner has an independent monitoring board comprising independent members of the public, which monitors day-to-day life in the prison, including making sure that all prisoners are treated fairly and with decency. IMB members have unrestricted access to their prison at all times. They are able to observe interactions between prisoners and members of staff and can talk to any prisoner they wish to. This can be out of sight and hearing of members of staff if necessary. Yeah, right. Any prisoner who wishes to speak to a member of the IMB on any matter can submit a request to do so locally. Yours sincerely, Nicola Marfleet, Governor. Really, is that the best that she can do as the governor of the prison? What is the point of this? Nothing was actually achieved. This is why Lord Pearson didn't stop here, because we kind of knew if you send the letter to the governor, they're just going to come back with a generic response anyway. So he has also escalated this. Obviously, a few days ago, after his initial letter, he also did a written question in the House of Lords to the government of Keir Starmer. Questions for written answers, right? So this was actually tabled on the 24th, right? And published on the 25th. The answer should come by the 10th of March, by the way. Lord Pearson said to ask His Majesty's government how many civil prisoners are held in His Majesty's prison Woodhill, and of those, how many are kept in its close supervision centre. Also, Lord Pearson to ask His Majesty's government for how long is it lawful for a prisoner to be kept in solitary confinement. Lord Pearson to ask His Majesty's government what assessments they have made of the psychological impact upon prisoners who spend long periods of time in solitary confinement. Lord Pearson to ask His Majesty's government how many people are in prison in England and Wales for contempt of court. Lord Pearson to ask His Majesty's government what assessment they have made of any abuse of Schedule 7 of the Terrorism Act 2000 in detaining journalists. So this is where Lord Pearson got clever. He knew that if he asks written questions of the government, specifically naming Tommy Robinson, he's not going to get a response, right? So he decided, after sending the letter to the governor of Woodhill, he's going to ask generic questions, specific but broad questions to the government about, like, how many political prisoners do we have in Woodhill, or how many people are actually in contempt of court? How often do you go to court to jail for contempt of a court? And obviously all the other cases as well, and basically mentioning Tommy without naming him specifically to go around the parliamentary and governmental bureaucracy, basically. So it's absolutely impressive the way Lord Pearson has been leading this in the House of Lords. Again, as we said, in the House of Commons, not necessarily in the chamber directly yet, but Rupert Lowe has been good on behalf as a Reform UK MP, and that so far the response from the governor was completely shambolic. We shall expect a response from Keir Starmer's government by the 10th of March. So that's another couple of weeks you have to wait to find out what they are going to say. These are, by the way, very valid questions that Lord Pearson has asked from the government. Even if it doesn't directly relate to Tommy, which they do, but they are broad questions just generally speaking, as any answer that the government gives to those questions can be used against the government and the Ministry of Justice and the governor of Woodhill. And they have to tell the truth. If they can't tell the truth, but they can't lie, because that will be very much, they obviously against the law. So what they will find a way to do is to either give you redacted answers or or answering questions without answering them. So they know they can't directly lie, so they have to find a way to be clever about the lies, right? So unless they actually tell the truth in the answers, which means that Lord Pearson and anybody can yet now use those answers to then say, okay, what about this individual specific prisoner, as in Stephen Yaxi Lennon? So what are you going to do about it? Are you going to fix this problem? Can we get the Justice Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, to do something about this? Can we get the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, to address the problem? Because right now, they're not going to talk about anything the moment you mention Tommy's name. Whether you talk about it in the chamber of the House of Commons or the House of Lords, you're not really going to get a response. What you will get a political response. So if, for example, Rupert Lowe asks questions in the chamber, stands up and faces Shabana Mahmood and says, what's going on with Tommy Robinson, she will already have a pre-prepared answer. So she would say, okay, so the question mentioned Tommy in person. So number one, she would say, just like Nicola Marfleet, the governor of Woodhill, Shabana Mahmood would say, well, we don't really comment on individual prisoners. That's number one. Second, they will make it a political response, which means Tommy Robinson, aka Stephen Yaxi Lennon, is in prison for contempt of court, and this is we condemn this sort of behavior, and everybody should respect the rule of law. That's the only response you're going to get, right? So just repeat of the same thing over and over again. Doesn't really matter what the situation and then the human rights violations of a prisoner right now is. They will go back to what led to him being in prison in the first place, which is completely irrelevant to his well-being as a prisoner, as, by the way, a civil offender, not a criminal convict. So this is what you're dealing with now. Obviously, as I said, 10th of March, remember that date. By that point, the government will have to respond. I'm guessing they're going to respond on the 10th of March. They're not going to be in any rush to give any response to Lord Pearson in terms of his questions. There's so much to cover on that. Obviously, I need to get your thoughts on this as well, both in the live chat and the comment section. We got the first one, Hoffman. Thank you very much for the super chat, saying free Tommy Robinson and Lucy Connolly immediately. My thoughts, my own subjective opinion is quite clear on this. Is contempt of court, considering that we have a massive crisis when it comes to prison spaces, capacity and everything else, and just basic human rights. Contempt of court and a civil offense, you should not be sent to prison. If, for example, what you've done is still very radical, right, and the state and the courts are very angry at you, what you should get, worst case scenario, is a bit of house arrest, fine, and with a curfew or whatever you're going to have, and community work, whatever you're going to, some sort of fine, the worst case scenario, that's what you should get. You should not be sent, firstly, to the main, among the main prison population anyway, with criminal convict. Secondly, definitely not solitary confinement. That's just a little bit OTT. It's like Guantanamo Bay all over again, in the middle of the UK, near Milton Keynes. Nobody would think this would be happening in 2025 in a civilized Britain, but I don't know if it is civilized anymore. So that's my view on civil offenders, what you should do with civil offenders as opposed to criminal convict. Ivan says, thank you, Ivan. The witch is hiding behind data protection. Just a total brush off. I hope she one day answers for her crime. That's a very good point, by the way. Ivan mentions the data protection thing. So whenever they don't want to answer a question, so in this case, the governor of Woodhill or the government in general, in these situations, they always somehow really care about the privacy of people, as in Tommy's personal privacy and his data, right? They're like, well, we can't really discuss the individual prisoner's information because obviously we have to respect this individual's privacy. What if the prisoner says, yes, I'm going to put my hands up. Please talk about me in public. I give consent. Talk about me. They're still going to say, no, we're going to hide behind. But somehow, when they want something from you, they force companies like Apple to get rid of their encryption system. They will use the Terrorism Act legislation to get access to your mobile phone, even if you're a journalist and you say, well, I can't really reveal my sources, for example. They have to use that. So when they need something, obviously, privacy doesn't matter, data protection doesn't matter, but when it comes to your own actual well-being, then There's actually a non-super chat here about the double standards of the justice system, which is actually very true as well. Brian James says, punch a dude on the ground 5 times and walk free. That's the former Labour MP Mike Amesbury, who initially got about 10 weeks in jail as a sentence. Then yesterday, after the appeal, they removed the whole thing and he's now walking freely. He's got a 2-year suspended sentence. He doesn't have to go to jail. So, although he does have to pay, I think, £200 to the other guy. So that's about £40 per punch. Yeah, not bad value for money, really. Sky, thank you very much for your massive super chat saying, Tommy for Prime Minister. Hurrah. Tommy, I love Tommy, but he'll be a terrible Prime Minister with his temper. No, to be fair, people like him, they have a massive role anyway. He's over the last few years, he's been trying to focus on his journalism and his documentary making, and he's good. He's been very good. Nobody thought that someone like Tommy, who came from a non-political background in a small area, actually could become a very good documentary maker. His skills is not really just about activism. Again, massive credit to someone like Tommy, because he's one of the few people who could manage to get a huge crowd on the streets, and peaceful crowd, by the way. There's a lovely people who come to United Kingdom rallies, but his journalism is also absolutely spot on. Mika says, Maya, were you disappointed in Trump yesterday? Oh, absolutely not. This is, I'm guessing, in relations to the White House visit by Keir Starmer. That was absolutely brilliant by Trump. He did exactly as expected. I think a lot of people are not, because basically he was very friendly with Starmer and David Lammy. So I think a lot of people are like, "Whoa, that is a little bit weird. He's being complimentary." I think a lot of people have not paid attention to the first Trump presidency between 2016 and 2021. This is exactly what Trump does. He did the exact same thing with Justin Trudeau. He did the exact same thing with Emmanuel Macron first time and this time. He does his charm offensive so that he disarms them. So he forces them to then compliment him instead of attacking him. And then he gets what he wants. So he's always very good at that. That's the reason he did this. There is let me just quickly check something, because what is sorry, I just got a message from the lovely Howard Cox. Yeah, that reminds me, I need to bring Howard Cox back on the channel to talk about, because he's got this obviously campaign which we need to also discuss. Margaret Barrett says, of course the government are not going to answer a straight question or even give an honest answer to this Lord. Nobody's data is protected anymore. That's the thing. This is why, firstly, Lord Pearson is experienced, so he knew, as I said earlier, he shouldn't mention Tommy's name specifically when he's talking about the letter, the written questions of the government. Obviously, the letter to the prison governor, he did mention Tommy's name individually, but with the government, if you want to ask government from ministers, written questions especially, it's best not to mention names, because as Margaret says, they're just going to not answer. Like, well, we can't answer on individual cases. So, but he asked broad questions that they have to answer. I'm actually very interested to see how they would answer that, because they're going to find a way to not answer it by answering, because they can't directly lie. So it will be against parliamentary rules. Michael Carter says, if everything is all right with Tommy, then the governor will not object to an unscheduled visit by the Swiss Red Cross organization. Imagine if we send the Red Cross there to check on Tommy's condition in solitary confinement, will she? Yeah, they're not going to allow that. So it's not that they will block it. as you guys know, these international entities are all connected. So hypothetically speaking, in a crazy world where somebody convinces Red Cross to go to Woodhill prison, these are all connected to obviously the United Nations and the government in general. So before you even get to that point, the UK government will pick up the phone to Red Cross saying, don't even think about it, don't even make it public that you're coming, and then Red Cross will just change their mind, even hypothetically, if it gets up. Or for example, imagine Amnesty International was not this far-left Marxist idiotic organization. Let's just pretend Amnesty International is an actual group that cares about humanity and human rights for a second. It's the same thing with them. If you, for example, manage to convince Amnesty International to go there, they're not going to even allow them to even publicly say, we're about to go to Woodhill. Government, will you allow us? They're going to pick up the phone saying, don't. Just don't. Because they're all connected to each other, and it's in their interest not to go. How would the public know if Tommy has requested an IRB visit or consultation? And would that visit or consultation be made public? No, I don't think it will be. And I don't trust the president to be honest and transparent. They lie. But this is, I think, one of the main reasons that they are terrified of people visiting Tommy, and they tend to get them to sign NDAs or cancel their visits, because they know if we go and visit him, then we're going to come out and say things, right? That, for example, Tommy said this. Tommy said nothing sensitive or confidential, because what does he know in prison? Like about the state of the country. That's what I mean. There's no information you could get from him. We are out here. We have more information about what's going on in the country than him. But the only things he would know is about his own condition. So clearly that means the reason they cancel visits and the reason they force you to sign an NDA is actually because they don't want him to tell you about his condition and then you coming out of prison and tell the whole public, which is a little bit sinister. What is wrong with a prisoner talking about his condition, right? About his own condition, unless they're doing something wrong. They're doing something bad against him. What? Someone said they are weak, they are terrified of Tommy and peeing their little pants over the support he has. I think they seem to be, and the general state and the elitist political people, generally, I think they seem to be a little bit more terrified of Tommy, but not because of Tommy directly. So I think that they have noticed that there has been a wave over the last almost 10 years now with the counterculture movement, the anti-establishment movement, even if you want to include things like Brexit and Trump and everything else, in terms of the symptoms of the counterculture movements, right? So they know that at this point, Tommy and his branding has become slightly more normalized and more mainstream compared to like 10, 15, 20 years ago, right? Back then, they could just crush him by just saying, don't even be associated with Tommy. He's just like he's a far-right villain, right? So everybody was like listening to the BBC saying, oh, sure, yeah, okay, BBC said that, right? The Guardian said that. And back then. But now with social media and everything else, people can do their own research and people can meet Tommy now in person. They're like, oh, well, you know, he's not perfect, but he's not the devil, right? And Tommy is just part of the fear. So the reason they're fearful is because of everything that's happened over the last 5 to 10 years, especially even like last year with the protests and riots, which then they try to blame it on Tommy, which makes no sense considering he called for peace. He said, don't go to the protests and riots. It's because they know the influence. They know it's become more normalized. And that's scarier because their fear is that, well, this is going to lead into more anarchy and more riots and more anti-establishment sentiments, and the whole society will become undermined and unstable and everything else. And instead of actually fixing society themselves, it's their job to do it, the establishment. They're just scared of the reaction. So they know that if Tommy, for example, now calls for a rally, it will be more effective than if he did 20 years ago, right? 20 years ago, you know, his smaller group of supporters, and by the way, smaller, that was still thousands of people. But now he could potentially get, if something huge happens, he could get 100,000 people. He could. That's the fear. Same fear that they have when it comes to people like Trump, people like Elon Musk. Back then, they could just say, well, It's just one person on the fringes. We'll just crush them. We'll cancel them, and nobody would care. And it kind of worked back then. Let's get more reaction. Angel Torah says, Tusi, is it you blocking messages or YouTube? For the record, I did check last time. On this channel, we get about 1,000 comments every 10 minutes across the channel. And we have a whole other things to do. I do not, unfortunately, apart from when I do the live streams, and I'm just quickly picking a couple of comments, you do realize I'm not able to read all the comments and messages. That's a lot of messages every 2 seconds. It is virtually impossible for me to block. Secondly, I believe in free speech. We don't block anything, so why would we do that? You could ask YouTube what's going on with that. Stu says Trump is okay with the Chagas deal. We have to wait for that. I think the conversations are happening behind the scenes now. I think one of the proposals is if the UK wants to get rid of it, just sell it to America instead. We'll find out. I'll keep you guys posted. Nina says that Trump is not stupid. He knows what he's doing, and he knows what they said about him. Exactly. That's the whole point. This is in response to what someone said earlier, were you disappointed in Trump yesterday? No, it's the same approach he's had since 2016. He knows what he's doing when it comes to foreign policy. Sky, again, thank you, saying, I think we need a complete overhaul of the whole system. Clearly, Labour, as in Labour, are only for a certain group of people, whilst the rest of us become oppressed. I think it's just a complete lack of control. Because the people who actually run the operation of the country on a daily basis is not even the people we elected anyway. And it's always been like that. That's the system. Bureaucracy after bureaucracy. They're faceless bureaucrats and civil servants. And they don't even know what they're doing, the actual politicians. Do you really think David Lammy, for example, or Rachel Reeves as Chancellor is sitting there like, I'm going to plot something? She's not even in control. They give her a script and she just reads it. It's complete idiocy. James says, can't wait for the party of all parties when Tommy comes out. P.S. Why can't I get flags up on my post? I don't know. I'm not sure about that. A lot of people have been waiting for when Tommy comes out. The plan is to have a big party anyway, big rally. And Tommy actually, his initial plan was to have it on a specific date, which I told him that's my wedding day. And he actually very nicely and generously said, yeah, we're going to change it. He's not going to have it on my wedding day. He's going to have it on a different date. But I think a lot of people were excited saying that's going to be big. But right now, personally, my opinion is I think it should be after a few weeks, I guess, after his release, because I think his well-being is going to be a little bit damaged. He has to recover first, but again, it's up to him. Quite disappointed with JD Vance. Why didn't he question lying Starmer when Starmer said we have freedom of speech and was proud of it? I've already covered this. Okay, so firstly, I don't think I have to respond to this. This is quite straightforward. I think it should be straightforward. The world of diplomacy is a very different world to going to the pub. If you go to a pub and you see your neighbor chain S and nonsense, you could say something. The world of diplomacy is something else. It's not like some sort of reality show where you're watching TV. Come on, JD Vance, say that now. Make me happy. Make me feel good. They know exactly what they're doing. You know, he's going to let them dig a hole. There's no point. There would be nothing to gain by the White House in that situation when they have all these other negotiations behind closed doors with Starmer and David Lammy for JD Vance or Donald Trump to go out there in front of cameras to just have a massive fight for absolutely no reason. Nothing will be gained. But you can use all that as leverage to actually respond behind closed doors and play the game. It's a chess. It's not like going to a pub and having a bit of a row with someone who is on the different side of the political spectrum. That's not really how real life works. Ivan says, join 2CTV Plus. Well, Ivan is once again advertising for the... Thank you so much, Ivan, as usual. So, okay, that's a good reminder. We have our promo code, DOC10. You get 10% off annual subscriptions on 2C TV Plus by going on 2c.tv. Where is it? There we go. Sexy. So yes, use the promo code DOC10. You get 10% off annual memberships, new annual memberships on 2C TV Plus. We have our documentary coming out this Sunday, Groomed, which is produced and presented by the brilliant Sammy Woodhouse, featuring Rupert Lowe, MP, and everybody else, of course. We have more in the pipeline. Make sure to use that. This is a limited offer. only for the next day or two. So do that as well. Thank you, Ivan, for the reminder. See, I didn't do it. I blame Ivan for disrupting. Well, anyway. Where are we with you guys? Someone said something about JD. Where is it? John says JD should have said, that's questionable what you said, Starmer. We wouldn't achieve anything. What would it achieve? Anyway, on that note, ladies and gentlemen, this is the summary of what happened with the exchanges between the Woodhill prison and Lord Pearson. We're going to take a short break and come back. There's absolute chaos happening in Athens, in the capital of Greece, which we're going to talk about. And of course, the Islamic Republic of Iran are preparing to attack Israel again. I'm Maya Tusi, and we are the media.